This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video. Also sponsored by Paragrafix. Add superior detail and accuracy to your models with photo etch, resin, and multimedia accessories from your first source for photo etch parts and more. Paragrafix. They count rivets so you don't have to. Visit Paragrafix at www.paragrafix.biz or click the link in the notes below this video. Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Engine's Chair. This episode, we're going to finish up the modifications on the bottom of the hull for the Reliant, and we're also going to finish up modifications for the back, the shuttle bay area. We're going to do some mods on as well and get those done. And at the end of this video, we should be just about ready. Next episode, we should be getting into lighting and getting that all set up and hopefully getting this saucer sealed up at the same time. We'll see. We'll see how far we get. But man, how time flies. It's August, and already we're only 10 months away from another Wonderfest. So got a lot of work to get done. I've got this. I've got some progress still going on with the 1000 Excelsior, and also I'm just about ready to put out an update on the 1537 Enterprise B. I've got just a few more things that I want to finish on. The part that I'm working on right now before I put out the video on it. But I'll have an update out on that soon, and we'll see what else I get into. The 1350 Enterprise A Ian Lawrence tribute build, I'm kind of on hold on that again. I'm sorry, but Cass had sent me some replacement parts I needed to do the shuttle bay, and I was trying to do something unusual with it. I was trying to take a different approach to it, to lighting it, and it didn't work out, and I ended up snapping the pieces, not because of the pour, the resin pour, but because I had to remove some material and I removed too much, and it didn't work out. So Cass is sending me, thankfully he's a sponsor and he supports me when I screw up. So he's sending me replacement parts again, and this time we're going to get it right. So bear with me on that. We will get back into that build, I promise. It's just going to take a little bit of time. As soon as he gets those parts to me, we'll be ready to get back into that. But anyway, we're here for the Reliant right now. So give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right. So first thing I started working on the underside here, and I'm actually working on the top side as well, because I didn't realize until after I'd finished up the last episode. I totally forgot about this. But the phaser banks. Now, you don't have to do this. You can leave phaser banks as they are, and they're completely fine. However, On the studio model, these are not raised. Just like on the refit, it comes molded raised around the where the turrets are. And it's not raised on the studio model. On the studio model, these are flat. That yellow box is just a painted on detail. It's not raised at all on the studio model. And I can show you an image of that right here. And you can look at that and you can tell it's not raised. It's not a raised detail at all. So it's just painted on there. So what I'm working on right now is pretty much sanding off that raised area. And then what I also noticed too was that the turret balls themselves aren't centered. They're not where they're supposed to be. If you look at this one, for example, let me bring this up closer and focus it in here for you so you can see. It's not too far. All right, this one here, I got something on my pointer here. You'll notice that this hole, actually, this is where the hole originally was, where I filled it in, is way out further than this hole. So what I did was I filled this one in and re-drilled it just a little bit closer to this line. And if you'll notice in that picture too, I'll show it to you again, this seam, this panel line is supposed to come through. You're supposed to be able to see this through the this area here, this phaser bank. This panel line actually passes through it. So what I'm doing is removing that raised detail, and also to restore those turrets, I'm using little metal beads. And they actually have a hole all the way through them. They're meant to be used for like necklaces and bracelets and stuff like that. So they've got a hole all the way through them. So what I do is I put these in place. I don't know if you can get a good look at them on camera here. If I can focus it properly, you might be able to tell, but I don't know if the light's gonna, see if I get the light a little better on that. You can see the openings right there. So it actually looks like openings on the turrets. And they're just beads. They're just little 2.5, let me close this up before I lose them, little 2.4 millimeter beads I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I'm sure you can get them at Michael's too. I've actually had these since I did my Reliant build, God, 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago now. And I still had these. So I decided just go ahead and use these like I did last one. I like the way that it turned out. It gives a little nicer detail on your turrets. And I just like the way they look. So that's the way I did it. And basically all you do is come in and just sand that detail off. And I'm not going to sit here and do this because it takes me a couple minutes to do it. But just so you get an idea, well, the first thing I actually do is I took my grinder. I cheated a little bit. You can use sandpaper to do this as well. But I removed the two humps that were here. I re-drilled these with, and I'm not sure, I'm going to have to look and see. I'll tell you after I take a break. I don't want to be digging through my drawer right now. I got to figure out what size drill bit this is to let you know what to use. But after I re-drilled these holes, I just came in and sanded that raised area completely off. Trying not to keep make anybody dizzy and my camera shaking. Like I said before, I do need to mount my camera on something other than the desk so it's not shaking every time I'm working on something on the bench. But I'll get that sanded down, and then I'll come in with my my etching tool, which is just a Tamiya plastic scriber. That's all it is. You can get these usually at Hobby Town, or I think I actually got mine off of Amazon. But I just like to clean up the lines, these panel lines a little bit, and make sure I don't sand it to the point where I lose my panel lines, because curved panel lines are a pain in the rear to get rescribed. Straight lines, not too bad. Curved lines are a little troublesome, at least for me. I'm not an expert scriber at all. But anyway, once you get that worked out, you can just take Oh, I had something laying here a second ago. I don't know where it went. Oh, let's use this. Just get something, a piece of at least thick paper, and line it up on that panel line. And then take your hobby knife, the back edge, use the back edge, not the front edge, because you don't want to dig in. Use the back edge of your hobby knife and just lightly scribe. Make sure we're in the right spot. We are. Just lightly scribe. And then after you get a couple of lines, increase your pressure on it till you get a line on there. And then what we can do is get this lined up again. And once we get a good enough line going there, we can take that away. And there we go. We got our panel line scribed right through that phaser bank like it should be. This will come in real handy once we finally get that 1350 Reliant. But there you go. You can see that line scribed through there now. So now that I've got that done, I can come in, and this is appears to be, if this is in the right slot, I think it is. It looks like this is a 5/64 inch. This is my Dremel bit. Looks like a 5/64 inch, or it could be a 3/32. They both fit kind of the same. So they're pretty close in size either way. A 3/32 might be better, just because this is a little small. But either a 3/32 or a 5/64 inch. I love metrics because metrics are a lot simpler than this American Standard equivalent. But you just take your drill bit, and what you want to do is you want to drill the hole, but you don't want to drill all the way through the plastic. You just want to drill in enough to be able to sit that bead in there. And what I'll do is, once I get a little bit of a hole drilled here, what I'll do is I'll take a bead. Well, it's a good thing I got 1,000 of them up. There it is. I was going to say, good thing I got 1,000 of them, because I don't know where that one just went. Get all this stuff off of my pointer here, make this a little easier. I'll take my little pointer and I'll put it through the hole in the bead here. And it just kind of holds my bead on the end. So that way I can put it where I just drilled and see how it sits in there. And you want it to sit just above the hole, at least to where that hole in the bead on one side. You can position it. You can position it however you want. I like to position mine kind of just out at like a 45-degree angle. You can position them to the front, to the rear, however you want to position them is up to you. But that looks pretty good, so I don't think I need to drill that hole anymore. So we'll try this side, because we want to try to make sure, what we don't want is one bead to be higher than the other bead. So we want to keep checking both of these and make sure that they, look even as we're doing this. So take your time doing this if you decide to go this route. We'll sit that in there. And those actually look pretty good. I'm going to put my magnifiers on, because it's a little easier to see these, to make sure that these are lined up the way I want them. I'm sorry if my head gets in the camera while I get this lined up, but I want to make sure these are pointing the way that I want them. And actually, no, I think I'm going to drill those a little bit more, because they're sitting up a little higher than what I want. I can see them a little better with my magnifiers on. So I'm just going to take my drill bit. And I actually can feel that like it's getting ready to break through the other side, so I don't want to drill that one anymore. And this one's going to be about the same, because these are both sitting about the same depth. So that should be good there. Make sure you get the hole cleared out. All right, I'll take one bead. Whoops. Slippery little slickers. And we'll take the second bead. And position these so that they're facing the direction I want them. All right, I can take these magnifiers off. Now I've got those set up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my thin CA glue. And I'll put just a little bit, and you've seen me do this before if you've seen my other videos. I don't like to put thin CA glue on anything directly. I will typically put it on my hobby knife blade and touch it to the surface. That's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to put a little bit on the tip. That's a little bit too much, so I'm going to take a little bit of that off. Just need a little bit on there so that when I touch it to the bead, it all just kind of flows in there. There we go. All right, so I've got that in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper towel because I got a little bit too much excess super glue on here, CA glue. So dab that up a little bit. I'm going to hit my zip kicker just to make sure that these get set in real good before I start messing with them. All right, and that's got them locked in. So now all you got to do is a little cleanup. Come in with my etcher again, my scriber. Make sure I got these panel lines cleaned up because a little bit of CA glue may get into your panel lines when you try to set these in, especially if you're using a thin set like I just did. It tends to run a lot and it tends to get where you don't want it. So I'll clean these up a little bit. And I'll do a little fill and sand if I need to. I don't think I need any fill on this because it looks like those filled in pretty well. And one is just a tad bit higher than the other, but that's okay. Okay, so those are done. That's the bottom done. I just got one left on the top that I've got to do. So I'm going to work on that so I can get that top finished up, and then we're going to come back and take a look. All right, so we've got those turrets all replaced. You can see them in place. They are all flush. Well, the turrets themselves are sticking up, but you know what I mean. That raised area is gone. It's all flush. We'll paint that yellow box in and around there once we get to that point. So top's good to go as far as modifications for now. There's a couple other things we have to do with it, but we'll come back to that. And all of our turrets are replaced on the bottom as well. So next thing we need to do to this, and this is probably the easiest thing that we've done that you're going to do this build as far as modifications, because we actually have molded in windows on the bottom part. Well, the miracles never cease. So you can see I've already drilled these all out. I am using, I think this is a 1/16 drill bit, 1/16 inch drill bit. I'm sorry for everybody that's overseas or in Canada using the metrics. Y'all have it made with that. I don't know why we're still using this archaic measuring system. Well, I do know why, but that's a long story there. So, but 1/16 inch is what this is. You can easily convert that into metrics on the internet. There's plenty of converters out there. But basically just going to come in and put it in where you see the windows marked, and we're just going to drill these out. And that's pretty much all we got to do for this bottom part here, this part of the section. Now we do have to drill this open. I'm going to have to drill an opening here so that I can run lights for that lower sensor dome, for the spotlights for that. So I'll do that off camera because I just use my big hand drill with a large drill bit on it to drill that big of an opening out. That way I can run my SMDs or LEDs, whichever I decide to go with, to light that lower sensor dome. And I'll get that done. But easy enough. That's the last of the windows to drill out. And those are all good to go. They're all drilled out. So with that, the next thing we need to take a look at is The absence of windows on the sides and on the rims, and what you see here are the inserts, which is part of that insert package that I'll be making available. I'm still doing a little work on this, a couple adjustments on this, but I've got this one into place on this side. But I'm trying to make these as easy as possible for you to use and put in. So when I go to the other side, I'm going to make some adjustments to this piece here. But I've got this one in, and this one fits really good already, so I can tell that one's going to go into place easily. And then we've got this one here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of these individual window inserts that are going to go in there. So we've got to get those put in place. And but the back part, the way that these are going to go in on the back is you take the insert. Now I've got to check and see, because I think I might have grabbed the wrong one off the printer. On these inserts, this back one here, you'll know it's in the right spot when that single window on the bottom, you can see there's a single and a long or oval window here, and then a single window by itself. That should be towards the back of that part, to be correct with the studio model. So this one appears to be the same part, and it's possible that I didn't flip these. I didn't mirror these when I printed them, so I may have to go back and reprint these. But the way that these get into place is you just hold them in place, and you want to line this up with the top edge, because we don't need to trim the top edge, we just need to trim the sides. So you're going to hold that in place along that top edge, and then this front is just going to butt up against this back edge here. So once you get that lined up, same thing as before. Let me grab my handy dandy pencil if I can remember what to do with it. There we go. Just take a pencil and mark that bottom. And then once you get that mark, you can just take a straight edge where you see the end of that, and make sure it's even along this edge here. But where that end of that, you want to just come in and draw a line. All right, I've got that marked out. So what you're going to do is now cut here, or we're going to drill holes, or if you've got a rotary cutter or that, you can cut it that way. But I'm going to drill holes around this and then cut through it all, just like I did for this side. And we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, so I've got this cut out now, and I've already done some of my work with the my files, getting this kind of opened up. And you can see this part here, it's got tabs on each side that kind of keep it from falling through. Basically, you just want this to, it can stick out from the hull some, because you're going to sand this smooth anyway. But what we got to do is make sure that this top edge of this piece is even with the top edge here and the top edge here. So if it's a little higher than either this side or this side, then I'm going to use my file and just keep working at this little by little until I get that to sit flush all the way across. And there we go. It sits pretty much flush with it. So now we can glue this in place. And I'm not going to do the putty work until I get this all put together. All these the back section put on, the top and bottom half put together. And then that, because you're going to have this seam to work with along here, all the way along here anyway. So you might as well just, I mean, you can do it anytime you want, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to do all this seam work at one time rather than having to keep going over it. So I'm going to get that in place. And then for this next piece up front here, we do the same thing. You just want to get this angle, this corner lined up with the same corner here. So I'm going to get that lined up. All right, now what you want to do is take your pencil. So make sure it's even across here. You got it all lined up. I'm just going to mark this with my pencil. Alright. And then we're going to take a straight edge, any straight edge. I'll mark this back section. And then where I stopped on the front, I'm going to mark this front end as well. Alright, and I'm just going to double check that. We'll put the piece back in place and make sure. It's easier to do those edges without the piece in place because you've got these edges on the front and the back here that will get in the way if you try to do it with the piece on there. So just make sure that this is about close. You don't need to be exact because you want, as long as it's smaller than this piece, you don't want it to be bigger than this piece. Because then you'll have a lot more putty work to do. So that looks pretty good right there. So now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to drill this out and get the general size of it, and then we'll come back and see how this fits, and we'll work it in as we need to. So we'll be back. Alright, so I've got this pretty much where it needs to be. And like I said, if it doesn't quite fit, you just keep working, whittling away at it. It actually fits perfectly in there. And if you just make sure you've got these top edge. This top edge should line up just like with this one. Top edge should line up with this. Top edge over here should line up with this edge of the saucer. You don't want this to be higher because then you're going to have a noticeable gap there, and you don't want it to be lower either. So just work a little bit at a time until you get it where you need it. Also, if for some reason this edge of the saucer, you can see it kind of angles out. This inner edge kind of angles out a little bit, so it gets a little thicker at the bottom than it is at the top. If you put this piece in place, it's got a tab on it. And that's meant to go behind it to kind of help hold it in place. If it keeps this from sitting flush with the outside here, just take your hobby knife or just take a file and just file it a little bit until it will sit flush with the outside of the hole there. And this one here, same thing. If it doesn't sit quite flush, you can always take a file or a piece of sandpaper and just kind of whittle this down just a little bit. Shouldn't take much until it all sits flush with the hole. So that way you don't have a whole lot of sanding to do once you get that in place. So I'm going to get this glued in place, and then we'll move on to installing our rim window pieces here, or rim window inserts. So give me a minute. We'll come back and take a look at that. All right, guys. So this last one, these are going to be a little more difficult to do because with these tabs on there, it makes it a little bit harder to line these up properly. But basically what you want to do is you've got 4 sets of windows around here. So you've got a panel line here and a panel line here. So you got 1, 2. So this second panel line is the one that we want to line this first window up on. So what I'll do is I'll take the window insert, and you've got those 2 sets of triangular kind of patterned circular windows that you can see there. And what we want to do is line that second panel line up right in the middle of these 2 windows, of those 2 sets of windows there in the middle. So I'm going to line these up. I'm going to hold that in place as best I can while I mark this with my pencil. Now this is just kind of a baseline, and I'm going from one end to the other end that needs to stick through the hole. Do not mark all the way past the tabs because you'll cut the hole too big. But I'm marking from one edge to the other edge of the window insert itself. Alright, and then from there I can take my pencil and just draw a straight line down for the ends. Remember, this doesn't have to be perfect. We want to drill these smaller. That's why it's important to drill these smaller than what they they need to be. That way you can work on it gradually. I'm just going to make sure that I've got that line where I need it. So that's right. And then because these kind of bend a little bit when they go around this curve, you don't get a perfect line as to how these are going to sit in there. So what I'll do is take a piece of tape and just stick it at the bottom of that low point in that line, because it curves a little bit because of the way the plastic piece is. And I'm just going to put this on that lowest point, and then make sure the tape is kind of even out as best I can. Again, doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to drill this smaller than it needs to be, and work our way out on it. You can see where I've marked these other ones. If the plastics, you can see that one real good where I marked these out. And it's just to give us a general idea of where we want to cut this out to start off with, and then again be well within those lines, so that way we can work our way out gradually on it. So just like what I showed already, I'm not going to show the full steps again. You've pretty much seen how I work through these. So I'm going to get these drilled out, and I'm going to get them worked out with the files and the sandpaper, and we'll come back and see how they turned out. Alright guys, so you can see I'm way undersized for this one, and that's great. That's fine. That's where we want to be. You don't want to be too big with it. So if you're undersized with it, just make sure that you watch. You've got that panel on the other side here too, but make sure that you check and make sure that you keep these centered up. If you've got to cut any more off of either side, you want to make sure you keep that window lined up and centered with where it needs to be. So I'll just put my two halves back in place. And one other thing I noticed too that we're going to have to deal with is they've got the locator pins on these for the top part anyway, right where we're going to have to put a marker light. So we're going to have to remove those and do something else with it. But yeah, just make sure that you keep checking the alignment of these windows, and that's fine. We actually need to take more off of this side here. So I'm going to keep doing that, keep working on these, and we'll come back and take a look. Alright, so I've got all of those window inserts are in place now. Might not be perfectly lined up in one or two of these, but not off enough to where you're really going to notice unless you're really looking for it. But it turned out nice. They look good. They should work out pretty well. One thing I did want to mention, there was another thing I noticed. And I'm going to show you a picture of the studio model. And when I show you this picture, I want you to pay attention to these two, or this grouping of windows here, particularly these two small round ones on the bottom. And look at this picture. And you'll notice that when you look at this picture, it doesn't look like those windows are there. It doesn't look like there's the two lower round windows are not there. So and I was looking at this and I'm like, well, maybe it's just the way the lighting is or something, and it just looks like just doesn't look like those windows are there. So I went and watched I didn't watch the whole thing, but I went and flipped through a couple of the scenes that the Reliant appears in Star Trek II, and I pulled up this image, this screenshot here. And you can see, sure enough, on the screenshot there, those windows, those two lower round windows are not on the model. They're not present. So they are there on the port side, but for the starboard side, those two windows are not there. And it's kind of odd to me that it's kind of like the way that these were different on the front, between this having the one window here and two windows in this bottom corner here. It's just kind of odd to me that they did that, and I don't know what the reasoning was for it, but maybe it was just to make it a little different there. I don't know. I don't know if there's some canon reason why these windows would be missing, but they're not there. So you have a choice to make here. I'm not going to change the inserts. I'm going to leave them in case people do want to just leave those two windows there. I'm going to fill them in just because for the sake of I'm trying to stick to the studio model as close as possible. So I'm going to fill these 2 windows in, seeing that they're not on the studio model. And I'll leave it up to everybody else as to whether they want to keep them or fill them in. So I'm going to fill these in. Well, what I'm going to do, though, if you fill in a hole, you don't want to just go in here with putty, even with the Bondo, because what will happen is when you go to sand it, sometimes that putty will sink deeper into the hole. So what you want to do is you want to fill these with something solid first. So I'll fill these holes at least to a certain point with UV resin, and then I'll fill them up the rest of the way with my Bondo. That way that Bondo has something to sit against that's going to hold it in place, rather than it taking the chance of it pushing through as you're sanding. So just something to mention there. If you're going to fill in a hole, don't just shove Bondo or any other putty into it. You want to backfill it with something like resin, or even a piece of sheet styrene if you stay, or plug it with something that's going to hold. You can put glue in there, CA glue in there, and let it harden up to provide the backing. But you don't want to just take, if you're going to fill in a window, you don't want to just take putty and stick it in there, because like I said, when you go to sand it, sometimes it can just push through as you're sanding down. It steadily pushes through, and then you go to paint it and you notice you can still see the window outline because it didn't fill in properly. So just a little tip on that. But yeah, it was kind of odd to me, though. I was just looking at the pictures, making sure that everything matched up with that all my my add-ons here matched up with what I'm seeing on the screen or the studio model, and I noticed that. And it was just something I had not noticed before. If you get the photo etch, obviously the photo etch from Paragrafix, you're going to have the same template for either side, so you can just not drill those windows if you don't want them on that one side. And then with Gary's Master from Paint Design, you can, I don't have those ones sitting up here right now, you can simply put a piece of tape over those if you don't want to paint them on the model and just leave them off completely, or you can just paint them on there. It's up to you. But just wanted to mention that. Something I noticed was kind of odd, but I thought I'd mention it for those of you that might be interested in trying to make the model as close to studio accurate as possible. So I've got all these in place, so that's pretty much it for the mods. The only other thing to do, and I've already done it, is to drill out. Don't forget to drill out your nav light openings here. And that's pretty much it as far as the mods for the bottom. I did mention that the top, where the marker lights need to be, that's where the locator pins are. So we're going to have to remove the locator pins and just line this up as best we can when we go to glue the top to the bottom, which shouldn't be a problem. But the locator pins are real small, and a lot of times they don't really help much anyway on this, because I think there's only 1, 2, 3. I don't think there's any in the back here. No, it doesn't look like there's any in the back here. So we're going to remove those, and then that way they're not blocking our lights. So next thing I'm going to move on to and get done in this episode. This will should pretty much finish up the main mods for this model. But I'd mentioned on this back piece, when you look at, let me pull up an image. Let me find it. Give me just a second. I should have just pulled up already, but there's an image here. There it is. Okay. Of the around the shuttle bay, you can see that you see those triangles. They're actually pretty large. And actually, when I built this model before, I had the photo etch, but to me they look like they're even bigger. These are actually bigger than what looks like it's molded into the model. So I actually made my own styrene triangles for these to replace these back here. But I'm thinking I'm just going to use the photo etch for this one. These should be just fine. They look a little bit bigger than these at least. But if you look at that picture, you'll notice that those triangles are pretty good size. And then when you look at this piece, they've got these 2 marker lights here. Well, they're way too high. They need to be down probably about, at least a millimeter or 2, maybe 2 millimeters down. And these triangles need to be even, because if you look at these triangles, if I can do it without the, let me see if I can move my light away a little bit, maybe it won't wash it out so much. But when you look at these triangles on here, maybe I can get this to work out. All right. When you look at these triangles on here, they should be the same size, but when you look at it, this one over here is actually a little bit higher than this one. At least that's the way it looks to me. If you look at this edge at the top here, this one just sits up just a little bit higher. They should be the equal height, and they should be, the top of these should be right at the bottom edge here. So I'm going to sand these off, these triangles that are on here, and fill in this big hole that they put in here that would, looks like it would probably fit a, let me see, I got a 3mm right here. It's not quite big enough to fit a 3mm LED, but they're pretty big holes. I'm going to fill those in because I want to move these triangles down, and these holes don't need to be quite this big. And actually I don't really need to worry about filling them in too much, because once I put the photo etch from Paragrafix in place, they're pretty much going to cover those holes anyway. But I'll fill them in anyway, just so I don't have to worry about light leaks or that. And then in addition to that, when we look at the instructions from Paragrafix for the shuttle bay doors, and what they want you to do is we need to cut out these templates. There's 2 templates here to cut out, because basically we need to open these doors, these shuttle bay doors up more for these photo etch parts to work. So I'm going to work on getting that traced out, and it should be pretty easy. It's just a matter of you cut these templates out. You don't have to cut both out. You can just cut one out and reuse it. You cut it out, you place the template over the door, and really you just line the top edge up with the top of the existing door, because what you're going to do is extend this out and down some, and then we're going to fold over our shuttle bay pieces, and they're going to fill in that spot. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on getting these sanded off and replaced, and we'll come back and look at the final result. Alright guys, so I'm working on the shuttle bay at the back here, and with the photo etch set you get this shuttle bay like we had talked about in the previous segment, and basically you just get it removed from the tree here, from this part here, which means just cutting it as close as you can, cut those stubs there. And then once you get this off, I've shown this before, but if you've got little stubs on here still from where you cut it off the parts tree, just take a file and work along the length of the piece. Don't work across it, because you'll end up bending it up. But if you just file along the grain of it, along the length of it, you can get those little stubs removed and get that even all the way across. And it doesn't take a lot of work. This brass is pretty soft, so don't go crazy with removing these little burrs off of here. Otherwise you could easily gouge out a little piece of the part. Hello. So we get those little burrs removed off there. Same thing with the back of the shuttle bay too. Get that removed off, and then come in and just remove those little burrs off of there. Not too big of a deal on here though. You won't see this part because where these connect to will be behind this piece here. But still not bad practice to go ahead and remove as much of that burr as you can. Stuff tends to catch on it. So once you get those cut out, what I'll typically do is take a piece of tape, and I might need a new piece of tape. Put that backing piece on there. And then what you want to do is you want to take the brass piece, and according to the instructions, where you see these ribs, they want to face inward, is what the instructions say. I would have figured you want them outward, but if I'm understanding that correctly, that means you want these facing inward when you fold them. So let's just double check our instructions here. Top notch engraved, lines pointing down inward. So you want them facing inward. So you want these lines, these scribed lines on here, to face towards the backing part. And you see you got this notch in the middle here on this part. And that's just going to line up with the notch that you have on the backing piece. All you do is get that lined up. And then I'll take a pair of tweezers and just gradually bend this around the backing piece, which is you got to keep it lined up. It can be a little testing at times, so you may have to do a little work with it to get it to bend where you want it to. And you're just trying to get a bend to it right now, kind of a general bend to it, and then you can come back and finesse it a little bit if you want. But as long as all these tabs line up, you should be looking pretty good. Got that there, and this piece here bends down, and then we need to bend the bottom up. Alright, so pretty much got that bent the way it needs to be bent. And just doing it on tape just kind of helps to hold it in place. If you don't have something to hold in place, it's going to want to pop out, and until you anneal it, it's going to want to straighten back out again. So this kind of having the tape back there to give it a little bit of something to grip onto kind of helps to hold it in place. So once we get that in place, I have to let this go a second. I'll get a little bit of my thin set cement. I'll put a little bit on the, again, just put it on the tip of my, my hobby knife, just a little bit. We don't want it to go all over the place. And then I will touch it and let it just kind of flow into the seam on this. If I really want to speed it up, I can hit with just a little bit of this zip kicker. And that's going to get that to set up better, a little faster. While that's doing that, whoop, put a little bit more CA glue on my tip here. And I'm going to make sure this bottom part's lined up, and I'm going to come in and do the same thing down here on the bottom. And because I've already got some zip kicker on it, it should activate immediately as soon as it comes into contact. So I shouldn't have to do anything with it as far as getting that to set up. So make sure it's lined up. I may have to put a little zip kicker on it. All right. Do a little bit more on this one side. So now I'm going to come back around just a little bit and do it around the outside here, just to let it kind of draw into those seams. That's what you don't want. I like the thin set on this because you don't want big globs of CA glue forming on this, and then you got to try to figure out some way to get in here and sand it. The thin set will, this thin set will kind of soak into the lines where those panels come together. And let's see this one more time. It should be plenty. And it'll kind of fill into those seams where these pieces come together, and then join them together. So let's see. Make sure this is all set up. And the great part about using tape is the tape will just come right off, whereas if I did this on a bare surface like my tabletop, you just glued this piece to your tabletop, so you don't want to do that. But we've got a couple little spots where the glue ran out, and that's fine because this is going to be behind or inside the model. You're not going to see any of this. So if it runs out here, that's fine. What I don't want is it running all over the place on the inside of this piece. But anyway, that's pretty much how you get that going together. Or at least that's how I get it together. That's the easiest way I found to put these little shuttle bay parts together, is just kind of use some tape to give it some grip. And then just bend them gradually around. Once you get them in place, put a little thin CA glue on it. And these work real nice. I used these for the previous Reliant build I did. So I've got the pair of these. Now, I like the photo etch. The photo etch works out really well. But I wanted to see if I could do a 3D part that would kind of help out as well. Because, you know, I like options. I like having options to look at other than just one or two things. So what I did was, now, first of all, here's the kit part. And it's just a clear part. So you would have to get this to light properly, you would have to mask this off. And you'd have to cut your own small masks. And I just think that would be kind of a pain in the butt. But I don't know why they didn't just make a part like I did with the 3D print here, which has your holes for lighting already in it. Let me focus this. So that way, once I put this in place on the model, you just glue it in place, and then you've got all your openings here. And I'm going to see if I can make some clear inserts for this as well. Because ideally, what I'd like to be able to do with these 3D parts is put them in, paint the whole model without having to worry about masking off all these openings for light, and then just put inserts, clear inserts in here to fill them in. And that way you can paint the whole model and not have to worry about masking. You just put the inserts in after you're done painting, and that'll be what lights up on these. So I'm going to see if I can make some inserts for these. It's just these corner parts that I'm going to have to take a look at. The way these corners are, or if I can get it in there, how they curve like that. Shouldn't be a problem, but I got to do a little work, get some clear parts made for that. But I will use these inserts. I'll probably use these on my other build. It was going to be I know I said it was going to be an out of the box, no mods build, but there's not a whole lot to this. I just won't go into the mods that I do on that one. But you basically just take your template and put it on. You can tape it on there. And then you would drill out that opening, the extra opening. Basically, it just drops this down a little bit more to where this part here will fit in from the back and fill in. So just like that. That's how it would look. Obviously, I haven't opened this up, but anyway, so we got those. I'll probably use these, save those for the, like I said, the next build I do, which is going to be more of a straight out of the box build. I'm not going to do a whole lot of mods on that. For those that don't want to do a whole lot of mods. But I did want to try my hand though at making a 3D part for this, and you can see I've got it installed on this side. I haven't finished painting, done any painting to that, so it's kind of unfinished on this side still. And you can see I actually broke this part down here when I was working on getting this all these edges smoothed out on this. So had to glue that back in. That'll be fine. It's sanded smooth, so you won't even know it's there once I paint it. But the way this 3D print part will work is you basically just take it and you line the top edge of the 3D part with the top edge of the shuttle bay that's there. Just like that, and try to center it as best as possible on the opening. And then again, just take a pencil and we're going to mark out where I need to open this at. All right, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that on camera, but I've got that pencil mark on there. I think you can just barely see it. So I've got to open that up more before I can install this other one. The other thing I'm working on is, again, and Paul's going to hate me because he sent me this photo etch and then he's going to think I'm not using it. I am using parts of it. But the reason I'm doing this is because when I installed this part, I sanded off that entire raised detail. And you're really just supposed to sand enough to remove the raised details on that, and then this photo etch part fits right over that. Well, I removed the whole thing because as I was sanding this, it was just easier to remove the whole thing. I could still use the photo etch, But what I would have to do is take a piece of sheet styrene to give it a little more depth, and then glue this piece onto that sheet styrene and then work it out. So I figured, well, if I'm going to do all that, I might as well look at trying to make a 3D piece to replace that. And I'll use those parts on my next Reliant build that I'm going to be doing. And what I came up with was, and this is unfinished, I'm still working on this. These will basically go on here like that. I don't have them perfectly lined up, but you get the idea. So they are going to go on like that. These are not the ones I'm using. I wanted to make that detail that's on there a little more noticeable than what it is. Especially the bottom there, you can't really see that detail at all. So I've got these reprinting now with a little bit more of a raised detail to it. And once I get those printed and get these all in place, we'll come back and take a look at this. So give me a little bit to work on this side. And oh, there is one other thing we got to look at. And I am using this photo etch. So Paul, don't get mad. I am using your photo etch. We're going to use these corner grills because these are, there's times when photo etch is, to me, really the only solution for something to really make something look good. Sometimes you can use 3D parts in place of it, but grills are one of those things where I think photo etch in general really makes it pop. And he's got some nice, Paragrafix has some nice corner parts, grill parts that are going to replace this part here, which we got to open up. But in the instructions, what they say is pre-bend the corner grills by placing them on the hole groove side against the hole. So you want your groove side, you can see on this, if my camera doesn't cause too much problem. So you see this side is kind of grooved. It's got these cuts in it, whereas this side is completely smooth. So you want this side that's got the cuts to it facing towards the plastic hull. So we're going to work on that. And but what I've got to do is I've got to, it tells you on here, to allow corner grills to fit smoothly against the hull, indicated that if you want to light the grills, cut out the center of the area, which is what I need to do. So basically what I'm going to do is, just like I've shown before, I'm not going to show it on camera again. I'm going to take my drill. I'm going to drill out this area in the center. I'm going to test fit this to make sure that the light is going to shine through these grills completely and not be blocked by any plastic around this. And then I'll get these bent and put into place. And we're going to try a little trick with this. So give me a little bit and we'll come back and we'll take a look at that. All right, I've got that corner photo etch in place. Now one thing I'm going to say is you probably could wait until you got the model together maybe to put this part on. I don't know if it'd be easier. My concern is the problem I had last time I used this was while you're building it, if you put it in this early, you've got to be very careful not to grab the model or put any pressure on these grills here, because they will bend and break, and I had so many problems with that my last build. But what I'm going to do is I'll probably take a piece of thin sheet styrene or something and tape it over that. Something that will conform to that curve. Tape over that to protect that so I don't have that happen this time. But what I want to do now is I've got, the first thing I had to do was grind that this one edge to match the edge of the piece, because otherwise this bottom corner here kind of sticks out a little bit, if you can see where I grinded it to match the plastic piece, so that when I put this to the hull, that'll all be together. Plus, what I'm going to try to do here is mate this photo etch to this plastic using a technique I've shown before, which is my my soldering iron. Now I wouldn't try this with a cheap little $10 soldering iron. I've got a decent soldering iron, and it gets up to like 900 degrees. And I've actually got this turned all the way up right now. So what you want to do is just, you don't want to put any pressure on the photo etch piece, but just touch your soldering iron to it and move it around a little at a time, and just let this piece get hot enough to where it'll actually just melt into the plastic. And again, not putting any pressure on the piece itself. I'm just letting the soldering iron sit on this piece and heat it up. And we're already getting some progress there. Just don't touch the plastic itself with your soldering iron, because then you'll melt a hole. You'll melt a hole through your plastic. Probably got to do a little bit of might have to do a little bit of putty after this, but a lot of the time using this technique you can get away with using very little, if no, putty. This is how I did, if you haven't watched my Ian Lawrence tribute build refit or Enterprise A build, this is how I did the Arboretum windows on that. I just gradually heated up the photo etch until it melted into the plastic some, and then came back and sanded around the edge where the plastic met the photo etch, and that's how I got that to blend in so well with the hull itself. Alright, so I've got that worked in as best I could. It's a little difficult to use that method on this curved piece, because inevitably when I would get one corner in, because this piece is hot and there's no real way to make just one section of it hot, the other corner would come up. So it's kind of hard to get this to sit on this curve evenly all the way around, but it's worked out pretty well on this edge. Top here is going to need a little bit of putty anyway, because there's a little bit of a gap from where I made this hole just a little bit too high. I shouldn't have come as high up with the opening on this, but that's alright. I'll get that filled in with a little bit of putty and sand that down. And the other thing with that is that you need to do these before you do the triangles, because, and I think it says it in the photo etch as well when you use the photo etch triangles, because the triangle is going to sit over top of that photo etch a little bit. So you're going to have to do these corner pieces before you can put the triangles on. But again, nothing saying, and I don't have that lined up on there right, but nothing saying you can't wait till you got the model together to do this part and then put the triangles as well on after, because we're not going to do any of the painting on this until after I get it all together anyway. But I'm going to get some putty on this, and I'm going to work on this other shuttle bay and get this all ready, and then once I get those triangles reprinted, once they finish reprinting, we'll come back and we'll take a look at those on here as well, and we'll be just about done modding this part. So stay tuned. I almost forgot to show you. I gotta show you how this shuttle bay will go in. So once I've got this opened up big enough for the shuttle bay piece to fit in there, basically just take a piece of tape and tape over the outside of it. Make sure the corners are sealed up real good, because we're going to use some glue or some UV resin. You can use either one to get this in place. You got the back side. Take the shuttle bay, obviously with the opening facing out, and line it up with this top edge, with the top edge of the piece. And I'm going to have to set it on something, because you've got this shuttle bay piece here. Basically line it up in there and press it down and get it set in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some CA glue. Now I can use UV resin, but UV resin doesn't tend to have as good of a bond as CA glue. So while I can use UV resin to kind of fill it in, I want the initial hole to be done with CA glue. So I'm going to take some CA glue, and let's see, I need a little piece of paper or something. I'm done with this insert. I'll use this little piece of paper here. I'll put some glue on here. And I'm not going to put it directly on the part, because I don't want it to get into any of the openings for the lighting. I'm going to clean this tip off. So once we've got this set into place and we're ready to go, just make sure that it's fitting flush everywhere. Take some of this glue, and I'm just going to drip it along the edge here, just making sure that I'm not getting any into the lighting openings. couple of these spots where we got a bigger gap we're going to have to fill in more. But I'll do that after I've got this kind of set in place. Alright, I'm going to come in with a little bit of zip kicker. Set that glue up. And once that glue is set up, we can pull our tape off. And it looks like it's good. So you can see there's still a lot of gaps around this that have to be filled in, and I'll fill that in with UV resin. But now that I've got the CA glue kind of holding this piece in place, you can see it sits pretty flush with it. If it sticks out a little bit or sits recessed just a little bit, that's fine, because we're going to sand this flush anyway. But we definitely don't want it sitting too uneven in the hole here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my UV resin, and same thing with the pointer. I'm just going to kind of dab it in around the edges here, and I'll use my UV light to kind of set that up. And once I get done with that, we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, I think this should be cured. So let's pull this tape off. Let's see if this is cured on here. It's still a little wet on this side, so I'll go back over it again with my UV light on the front, because some of this in the front may not have set up all the way. So I'll take a couple more minutes and let this cure with my UV light. I might even stick it in my my curing machine from Anycubic and just let it sit in there for a couple minutes and let this stuff finish curing. But either way, once you get this kind of set up, whether you use CA glue with some kicker or you use UV resin, once you get this set up, you can come in, sand it. You can use some Bondo or any other type of putty to help fill it in some more if you need to and smooth it out. And then once you sand it flush, it'll look like this side here that I've got done, and it's ready for painting. So once I paint it, we'll be able to see how it really looks. So give me a little bit longer to work on that. I'm still waiting for these corner pieces to finish printing. I got about an hour left on that, so we'll come back and take a look at this once that's done. All right, guys, so we got this one side pretty much done. I am going to, hopefully I can show you this because it's still painted black right now. I haven't done anything else to it. This one here, I'm probably going to pop off and put another one on because it's got a little bit of like a wave right here where it kind of comes up a little bit. I don't know if you can view it from the side, but it's almost like I got a little too much. I got more glue on the top end and the bottom end, and there's a little bit of a kind of a bend in this right here. So, but I mean, you can kind of see where I'm going with this and how it's going to turn out. I've also got a little more putty and sanding work to do right here. You can see there's a dip right there where I didn't get some putty in there yet. You see how those vents are looking? They turned out nice and they're blending in real good. I'll do some more blending. Right there where the triangle is looks pretty good, but the top and the bottom I'm not too worried about yet, because once this gets mounted onto the model, I'm going to have to do some more putty and seam work there anyway. So we can kind of see how that's going to fit in there. So this is going to pretty much blend in pretty easily once I get this mounted on here. So that shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I think that's turned out real nice. I think those add-ons are going to work real well. And you can see I'll just have to light those up. And again, I'm going to look at trying to make some window inserts on here. I've got just a little piece of little hair or something right here. I've got to get out. There we go. So I'm going to try to make some inserts for these, so that way once you're done painting you can just pop those in and not have to worry about masking those off. I think that's going to be easier because I'm pretty sure my Cricut might cut masks that small, but I think it's going to be easier just to be able to slide in some window inserts if that's possible. So I'm going to work on those. But that pretty much gives you an idea of how that's going to look when I finish it. I think it's going to look a lot better than the standard model. You can see I've still got to do this side over here. Got to do all my putty work, my sanding, and blending that all in. But I'm going to work on that, and that should pretty much be it for the hole modifications. I did do one more thing. I did drill a hole. You're going to need to drill a hole on the bottom here if you're going to light those spotlights on the bottom here, which I am. So I got a hole drilled through there to run wiring and lights through. And other than that, unless something else comes up, I think that's pretty much it for all the modding that we have to do. We did the top last episode, we did the bottom this episode, and we just finished up also this episode with the back. So I think that's going to look good. Everything's turning out real well. And next episode we should be able to start working on putting the lighting in. And we'll have to do a little bit of assembly, but I think the assembly won't be much. We'll attach this piece to the bottom half here and get that worked in. And then we'll do all of our lighting, and we'll be able to get this sealed up. Hopefully we'll be able to do all that next episode and be ready to kind of move on and do some of the finishing work around the saucer edges, getting that seam blended in. But that's my goal next episode, is to get this get the lighting done in this and get this buttoned up and sealed up, so that way this part's done. And then we can start looking at our roll bar and our nacelles, getting those taken care of, because there's a couple things we're going to have to do to that as well. I don't think we've really got a whole lot of modification. There's some things I might add to the roll bar that I think is missing from the model that's on the studio model, but other than that, no major modifications that I can think of off the top of my head. The nacelle, same. We've got to add 2 lights to the front of that nacelle that are missing from the model kit. So, but we'll talk about all that when we get to it. I'm glad that this is coming along pretty nicely. We've got this buttoned up as far as the modifications, and we're ready to move on and do our lighting. So that being said, again, we're going to wrap this episode up. So thank you everybody for watching this episode. Thank you for your feedback. And as always, I'm going to ask, if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button down below. It costs you nothing, but it helps me out tremendously, especially with my sponsors. And again, as always, shout out to my sponsors: Gary over at Mass Design, Gus over at GCals, Cass over at Lake Monster Details, and Paul over at Paragrafix. I appreciate all of them for their support and providing the parts that are going into building this model. And looking forward to getting this one done up. And also I've got the other side, the other build of this I'm going to do that's more of a straight out of the box build, that I'm going to be using Gus's Aztec decals for that instead of painting. This one I'm using the Mass Design draw the blank all of a sudden, the Mass Design paint masks to do this one, and then the other one I'm going to use Gus's decals for. So again, thank you everybody for watching. Till next time, keep modeling.